Falwell Jr., now defending the comments that he made last week referencing Muslims and gun control. WSOS 10's Rob Manch met with the university's president today to talk about his remarks.
Hundreds of colleges and universities have sent students home because of the coronavirus, but one university is bringing students back to campus during this crisis. Jerry Falwell Jr. posted a photo of himself in unzipped pants with one arm around a woman and the other holding a glass with dark liquid, which he described as, quote, black water.
The former pool attendant at the center of the sex scandal that led to the downfall of Jerry Falwell Jr. is breaking his silence. In his first TV interview, he claims the former president of the conservative Christian Liberty University encouraged him to sleep with his wife, telling him to, quote, go for it.
Falwell agreed to resign from Liberty University, then reversed course. Come on, he's in, he's out, he's in, he's out. All the rest of us can do is sit back and watch. Late last night, Falwell resigned again, explaining that the affair led to stress, weight loss, and the feeling that...
If you came here, whether you were associated with Liberty and Jerry or not, whether you know his story, or if you're just here to learn what the hell happened, this video is for you. For legal reasons, I'm going to preface this video by saying everything I'm about to say is taken from other people who were involved with Jerry and different articles. So everything from here on out is purely allegations. But, I mean... So who is Jerry Falwell Jr.? He is the son of Jerry Falwell Sr., who founded Liberty, and upon Jerry Sr.'s death, Jerry Jr. took over in 2007 and was president for 13 years until this most recent summer in 2020. Now, the Falwells have been steeped in controversy for decades, and I guess Jerry Jr. didn't want to break that hot streak they were on. So when he became president in 2007, this is what I have dubbed the beginning of Jerry's rise to infamy. Jerry and his family have all been involved in the conservative evangelical community for decades, but I think a lot of people who were there when I first got to Liberty in 2015, especially people before me, can attest to the fact that Liberty, for the most part, was pretty devoid of a political hard-on that it's had the past couple of years, especially in Convo. And Convo, for those wondering, is pretty much just a ginormous chapel. It's pretty much just a gathering of all the students who live on campus. It is mandatory. My first year at Liberty was the 2015 to 2016 year, and I heard a ton of different political speakers at Convo. I heard Ben Carson, Gary Johnson, Trump, and to the surprise of probably many of you, Bernie. Jump to the next year, the 2016 election year, and this is where things, especially in Convo, started getting really fucky. For starters, there were zero, and I mean zero, outside opinions other than vote Trump. Jerry was bringing in anybody he could find that would give the message of vote Trump to all of the students. Jerry was out here with Cheeto lips with how much Trump dick he was sucking. I really cannot express how many bullshit convos I had to sit through who all ended their same dumb speeches with, I love Jesus, we are supposed to love people, vote Trump. So if you thought Jerry was riding Trump's coattails for nothing, you would be wrong. Jerry was offered the position of the U.S. Secretary of Education, which he denied and said he didn't want. He said because he didn't want to be away from the school for too long, but if I was a betting man, I would guarantee you it's because he didn't want to take the pay cut. Now, there's a bunch of other shit that Jerry pulled as far as his dealings with his Republican buddies, but anybody who really knows about Jerry Falwell at this point, or just hearing what I've had to say, pretty much gets the idea that he's a conservative shill. This chapter is going to be pretty brief because I want to get to the next two chapters, which I consider to be the biggest bruh moments of all. So let's get cracking. My freshman year at Liberty, I was sitting in Convo, my buddies right down the aisle from me, as we always did, and God damn it. And towards the end of Convo, Jerry came out on stage and started talking, which is always a bad start. More specifically, he started talking about gun control and his annoyance with it because he's a good gun-toting American. And to close out Convo, his big grand statement, with the confidence that only someone who gets a hard-on thinking about the American flag and Second Amendment could muster, said this.
I've always thought if more good people had concealed carry permits, then we could end those Muslims before they walk in and kill it.
Now, perhaps you are making a face very similar to the one I made and my friends made all those years ago, and it looks something like this. And as you can probably hear from the clip, any words we could have said to each other were drowned out by the roar of the crowd. So we pretty much just had to sit there in befuddlement at what we were witnessing. Jerry handled COVID about as expected. He brought everybody back to school after spring break in 2020 and told the media that the governor was really happy that I did it, even though the governor later went on and was just like, no, I didn't. He's a dumbass. And then eventually sent people home and went to online. And then he brought everybody back in the fall of 2020 and didn't have any kind of social distancing or mask regulations on campus for employees or students. So the media got a hold of how crazy people were acting on campus and ignoring it. And then they were like, okay, guys, I guess we should probably make a mask policy. And then there was the time a journalism student who wrote for the Liberty Champion, which is our university's newspaper. He wrote an article pretty much criticizing Jerry for his insane political push for Trump. And Jerry had it taken down. And if memory serves, this very same student eventually graduated and went to some people who would be very happy to put out a piece on Jerry and how he was handling more than just the politics at school. Anybody associated with Liberty around 2019 knows the weight of that last title card, especially given recent events. So according to the article, Jerry, unsurprisingly, ruled Liberty through fear. All professors that I have heard about are under one-year contracts, which means there is no guarantee that you're going to have a job the next year, and I would be willing to bet that a lot of the higher admin were on a similar contract. The article also had some quotes from someone anonymously who said they had overheard Jerry pretty much saying he doesn't give a shit about any of the students. He's not running a school. He's using all of the students' tuition money to be able to buy more property around Lynchburg and pretty much just grow a real estate empire. The article used several interviews from anonymous staff members who all had to remain anonymous because apparently every single employee under Liberty has to sign an NDA agreement that forces them to not be able to talk about anything Jerry does. Anything. Anything concerning Jerry and Liberty, not allowed to talk about it to the press. So you know things are pretty good when a prerequisite to working with someone is that you can't talk about anything they're about to do during your work relationship. Nepotism was implemented by Jerry Falwell. His sons and wife were all on the payroll and over multiple years got upwards of 300% wage increases while student tuition rates went up and employee wages stayed the fucking same. The man was funneling millions of dollars into his own family and not giving back to any of the people who were actually running and populating the school. The article also is one of the first pieces to really talk about how Jerry not only shared risque photos of his wife Becky with other staff and admin, but was almost aggressive about it and would like brag about how good he fucks his wife. I believe this was also the first piece to hint at the whole pool boy scenario, which is coming up. But it should be noted, and my friends can attest to this, that when the hints of the pool boy story were first leaked, I made a joke that was something to the extent of, it'd be pretty fucking funny if Jerry liked being a cuck. Now, this chapter, out of all the chapters, is probably the one that people outside of Liberty have even heard because of how massive it hit the media and because of how weird it is. So it was all over Reddit. So you've probably heard at least a little bit of this story. So all of this began when a photo of Jerry side hugging a random lady with both of their pants unbuttoned was posted to his Instagram. Now, to me, it was for sure weird. It's a very strange photo. Jerry clearly looks a little bit tipsy, and it's just an odd picture to post when you're a married dude. But, I mean, to each his own. It's not really my concern. But for a lot of the Christian community, apparently this was the final straw, which was weird to me considering all of the shit Jerry's pulled throughout the years. But apparently he had gone too far this time. And out of this outrage sprung the story to end all stories. Amidst all of the back and forth, should he be fired for the picture? Should he not be? Out of the shadows, an old story came back to the surface. The pool boy. The story had come back, and with a lot more weight to it. People were much more willing to question Jerry, and it wasn't going away this time. Very quickly, the blame game started. Jerry pretty much immediately threw Becky under the bus and said that she had been doing it and he was forced to deal with his trauma and depression, and he had started drinking again, and that's why he was acting so weird these past few years. He claimed the pool boy was lying and was actually extorting them for money, or else he would tell the world. And then he arrived. Like Gandalf showing up to the Battle of Helm's Deep, our boy arrived. Giancarlo Granda. And he came prepared. Texts, emails, voice recordings, the whole 9 yards. He knew this shit was going to hit the fan eventually, and our boy was not about to get thrown under the bus by the Falwells. So the bomb was dropped, and according to him, not only did Jerry know about it, but he would watch sometimes. Jerry was a cuck. When I tell you I was losing my mind over this, I mean it, because not only was this a wild story to come out in the middle of everything happening in 2020, but also my dumbass joke I had made back in 2019 was proved true. Do you know how often someone makes a joke off the cuff that guy's probably a cuck, and it comes true? Not very often, I would think. Maybe 3 times every 5 years, maybe. I don't think more than that. And on top of all of that, according to Granda, Jerry was predatory about it.
His new thing is like telling me every time he hooks up with people, like I don't have feelings or something.
You're gonna make us jealous, man.
Yeah.
Not trying to do that.
Like a week ago, I was in tears for a whole freaking day.
Come on.
He's like, I hooked up with this girl on Tinder, and then I got her an Uber, and I'm like, just completely depressed.
How the fuck do you aggressively make someone fuck your wife? According to Giancarlo, he went everywhere with them. They took him on vacations to their family farm. I think the dude even met Donald Trump because of his arrangement with them. He also said that at one point Jerry sent him a photo of a Liberty student exposing herself to Jerry, and the photo was taken at their family farm. And I can only assume he sent it because, as the Politico article described, Jerry has this weird need to share his exploits with people. The entire situation was beyond fucked. And as fucked as it was, I still can't help but say that Giancarlo Granda is my fucking hero. This man fucked another dude's wife, got paid to do it, went on vacations with them, and when shit hit the fan, pulled out the blicky and put them in their place. Absolute king shit. But Giancarlo apparently wasn't the only victim of these fucking creeps. According to a friend of the Falwell's son, they came back from a band camp thing or something, and while he was in bed, Becky just leaped into bed and started sucking him off. And he couldn't say no. He didn't know what to do in that position. And then afterwards, Becky kept sending him Facebook messages being like, oh man, I hope we can do it again. And he had to just kind of be like, bro, stop. Jerry and Becky were pretty much our own little small-scale version of the Epsteins. Ugh. And throughout all of this, starting with the Instagram post from so long ago, negotiations for whether or not Jerry was going to be fired had been going underway the whole time. This chapter is going to be pretty brief, and I'm actually really stoked that I get to talk about this chapter because when I originally planned on making a Jerry video, this chapter and honestly the past 2 chapters didn't exist. So I'm really happy that I get to end this video on a bittersweet note. So basically, after the Instagram post went up, the controversy happened, the petition went up, Jerry stepped down for an indefinite leave of absence, and it pretty much looked like he was done. And then as the pool boy story rose up again and all of, the Giancarlo Granda stuff happened, Liberty announced that they were officially asking Jerry to leave, and he was done. They were giving him the boot. And then Jerry told the media that he wasn't leaving, which confused many of us because it didn't seem like he was in a position to say that. And then 2 days later, he told the media, never mind, I am leaving, and I'm a boy, oh boy, am I grateful to be leaving. I believe he was quoted as saying, free at last, which is really weird for him to quote that given the circumstances of him leaving. Jerry was pretty much acting like every toxic dude that gets broken up with, and he tells his bros, nah dude, we're not broken up, bro, we're not doing it. And then as soon as she posts a photo with a different guy, he's like, yeah dude, she was crazy, I'm so glad I got out of that relationship. And with that, Jerry was gone. 13 years of sexual misconduct, abuse, shitty treatment of students and staff, wealth hoarding for him and his family. It was all gone. We finally have a happy ending. No, actually, he's receiving $10.5 million for being fired without an official statement of wrongdoing. So, in conclusion, Jerry sucks. Obviously, that is an understatement. This whole video is an understatement to the pages and pages of stuff you could read about what he did at his time at Liberty. Strangely enough, I feel like I haven't said half of the things I could have said about that man, but I hope this was enough. If you liked this video, like it, subscribe, share it with other disgruntled Liberty students who might find this cathartic. And I guess if I could say one last thing to Jerry before I go, it would be, Jerry, don't ever show your face in politics like you have any sort of credibility or knowledge about what the fuck you're talking about. Your friendship with Donald Trump and all the other soulless senators out there doesn't mean shit. You think that because you made millions for a bunch of money-hungry congressmen that you now have some semblance of importance in politics or this country. But the truth is, despite your millions, despite all of your buddies in politics, you're a yappy dog in the laps of more powerful men, destined for an unremarkable life, whose only legacy, the only thing you will be remembered for, is that a pool boy fucked your wife and got paid to do it.